This is just the state of college football. Any team we pick, any team we talk to, any team we address and review in terms of personnel changes, coaching changes, there's a lot going on in college football. The transfer portal is stuffed. I've heard the number 1,400 thrown around. Recruiting going on as well. Of course, National Signing Day is past us, but we've got the second National Signing Day coming as well. So personnel changes, tons going on with every team. But those coaching transition teams, they are really humming with all sorts of overhaul, including, of course, at LSU. And we got Carter the Power, the Power Hour LSU YouTube channel. Got our guy Carter right here to talk some LSU football. Carter, it's been a long time. Appreciate you being here.
Let's go.
Yeah, you're ready to go here.
Yeah. It's interesting, Mark. Like, I care about all of college football, right? As much as I love LSU and getting to do what I do for, a full-time job now. And that, YouTube's just an amazing platform for college football fans. And I see your viewers interact with you really well. And I think we're watching something at LSU right now for the first time amongst the college football blue bloods, which is a complete overhaul of a roster through the transfer portal, right? So we've seen Alabama and Georgia pick up huge transfers, right? So, Georgia probably doesn't win that game if they don't get Darian Kendrick before the season. And Alabama doesn't get to where they get without Henry To'oTo'o and, more notably, Javis Williams, right? But those are just a few pieces, right? And LSU in the past has had a few transfers step up in a few spots. But this is the first time one of the 5 or 10 best programs in college football is pulling a Mel Tucker here, right? Where Michigan State just completely overhauled their roster, led by Kenneth Walker with the transfer portal. This is the first time that we're seeing this with one of the best. And right now, LSU has as many transfer portal players, or almost as many transfer portal players in this recruiting class as they do actual high school recruits. And Mark, I know you love all the fascinating angles that the transfer portal has brought college football. We're seeing this for the first time with one of the best. And I think it's going to help Brian Kelly turn this thing around in year one.
We encourage everybody to head on over to Carter the Power, the LSU channel that Carter's got here, Power Hour LSU. So look it up in any way, fashion. Get Carter in the title, get Power in the title, and I think you're going to be able to find him right here on YouTube. All right, man. Let's look at this, because I tuned into the Texas Bowl and I'm like, wow, 38 scholarship players on this team. Wow, this is a skeleton of a team right here. This is not the LSU team that is loaded with talent, and even though they've had 2 consecutive disappointing seasons, could pull off a game like they did against Alabama or Florida and jump up, and because they've got that kind of talent. You went from, for example, having the best tandem of cornerbacks in college football heading into 21 to where are the scholarship cornerbacks? We don't have any. There's a couple guys running around, and that's all we've got. So I was trying to decipher, watching the game, listening to the game. Okay, who's going to be back? Who's going to be impactful? Who doesn't really matter because they're probably headed out the door, or they're buried on the depth chart and they just need players out there, so they're getting their shot tonight. You mentioned the offensive line. So let's start there in terms of NFL departures. We just passed a date where early entries could make their declaration to the NFL draft January 17th. So where does this offensive line stand? Who are the candidates to fill in and make this thing go in 22?
Yeah, so, it's kind of hard to really fathom this, but LSU is going to have to replace 4 two-year starters on the offensive line. Now, the positive side of it is that LSU's offensive line has been mostly meh these last 2 years. Obviously, in 2020, they weren't really good. At the end of 2021, their new offensive line coach, Brad Davis, did a better job with the group. And they lose Ed Ingram, who was a big contributor to the 2019 team. And then they also lose Austin Deculus. So, going back to the transfer portal, it's where LSU has really been killing it, led by Miles Frazier of Florida International. They also picked up a really solid offensive lineman from ETSU, and I don't think they're done there. I think they're going to look for more playing time coming out of the portal. And look, they had some players step in and play some snaps last year, Mark, that were okay. But I don't know if they are the answer to be full-time starters on the offensive line. And as you know, you can't win a national championship just with 5 offensive linemen. You need 7, 8, 9 of them. And this is where it gets fascinating, Mark. I'm looking at all the viewers right now. This is where it gets really interesting, is that Louisiana, for the most part, all right, so you see all these great players in the NFL, right? You see Jordan Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all the great defensive players like Devin White and Tyrann Mathieu. But what's interesting is out of all the positions, offensive line has been the one where the numbers aren't quite like the others. And that's in large part due to in-state offensive linemen that Louisiana produced haven't really been all that great. Now, there's been some, but it hasn't been as good as the other positions, right? So this is where recruiting becomes a big deal. Georgia's starting center was a guy by the name of Cedric Van Pran, who was a top 100 player coming out of New Orleans, and he was really good. There's no other way around it. He was really good. So in this cycle, Mark, LSU had not one but 2 elite 4-star offensive linemen. That is Emory Jones out of Catholic High in Baton Rouge and Will Campbell, who's a North Louisiana Tiger. Those guys were both top 250 guys. I even see Emory Jones being very underrated. I think he's the best player in the class of 2022. I think he's so severely underrated. Those 2 guys could obviously help out and play right away next year, but I don't think Brian Kelly's really going to want that in year 1, playing so many true freshmen.
Got Carter here. Check out his YouTube channel. It's you see the enthusiasm, the knowledge. It's obvious right here. So you got to check out what's going on Power Hour LSU right here on YouTube. So when we switch to the defense, you know, if you go back to 2019, this is a defense that developed throughout the season that took its hit, took its knocks as, okay, this is just an offensive show and they're going to carry them to a national championship. But it turned out to be a legit top 10 type defense down the home stretch. Your thoughts in looking at, you know, you mentioned linebackers to me in regards to having to overhaul the linebacking position to a certain extent. You know, who are we looking for in 22 at linebacker?
Yeah, so, you know, we were talking about the transfer portal earlier. LSU's also had some fringe NFL draft guys come back. So they get Jay Ward back, a really solid member of the secondary. I think he was playing out of position last year. They also get Dre Jenkins back, a good contributor at wide receiver. But I think the biggest name that they get back is Micah Baskerville, who is a very experienced player, another North Louisiana Tiger, who is going to undoubtedly be the leader of that linebacker core. So the key now is finding the other guy. They bring in Wes Weeks, a Virginia transfer. They obviously have some other talented players, Greg Penn being one of them. But this is, once again, something that gets very interesting, right? So the defensive line looks fine up to this point. But we first need to see, Mark, what Matt House is going to do. So he is the new LSU defensive coordinator, and he has not been a defensive coordinator since 2018, where he was at Kentucky. Now, what's really interesting, Mark, is, once again, you're a diehard college football fan. You probably remember that 2018 Kentucky defense. They were really good. They had Josh Allen, 2 other draft picks in the top 3 rounds as well that are still in the NFL in the secondary. So it comes down to what kind of defense does Matt House want to run? How different is this defense going to look after spending time in the NFL for 3 years as just a position coach? So, you know, he's also going to be the linebackers coach. It's going to come down to, does he want to run a 3-3-5? Does he want to run a 3-4 and have BJ Ojolari play that Josh Allen outside linebacker role? And that's going to be key in how this defense is going to look.
Yeah, Mike Edwards comes to mind off that Kentucky team in 2018. He's making plays in the NFL. You see him in the NFL playoffs right now making plays. Yeah, Kentucky could play defense in 2018 for sure. 10-3, top 10 team. All right, DBU. You know what I would love to do sometime, Carter? I would love to bring you on here, because you know your stuff. Other people that really know their stuff that can debate, that know their stuff and can take it toe to toe, like a Florida rep, an Ohio State rep.
Yeah.
You know, the various schools that would have a legit claim to DBU. LSU certainly at or near the top of the list, depending on your perspective. But Derek Stingley's gone. He is declared for the NFL draft. Eli Ricks, of course, has made his transfer move to Alabama in division. Ouch, that hurts. I heard the statistic that LSU went to the field with 2 scholarship cornerbacks against Kansas State. So to be DBU currently 2022, how does that look?
Yeah. So let me just say this, and I know a lot of LSU fans are going to get mad at me. Let's hope we hold on to that DBU title going into next year, right? So, look, LSU has had the most legendary defensive backs of this modern era play at their university, and they are unquestionably DBU. Now, I understand a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's just an LSU fan just saying that. No, it's just true. LSU is DBU, right? Alabama's had great defensive backs. Florida's had great defensive backs. As a Saints fan as well, I know Ohio State's had great defensive backs, right? But LSU is DBU, all right? A guy who hasn't really played in 2 years is still going to be a top 10 pick. So it is unquestionably true that LSU is DBU. However,
I think it's a debate, but go ahead, Carter.
No, it can be, right? But to objectively look at LSU secondary right now and think you feel unbelievably confident about the secondary as we've been basically every year. This is the first year where you are really shivering your timbers looking at the LSU secondary, right? Now, here's the good news is that once again, the transfer portal has helped out. They bring in Greg Brooks, Joe Big Play Fuchsia, both out of Arkansas, both Louisiana prospects. Then, of course, you bring in Mekhi Williams-Gardner out of UL. So that obviously helps out. Now, how does LSU look at the safety room? That's going to be key as well. Do they want to move Jay Ward from safety, who, quite frankly, wasn't really that good at safety last year? And then, of course, you have some guys that are backups that are really talented, but just can't stay healthy. And obviously the biggest name there is former 5-star Sage Ryan. So that's what's going to be key. How they view who plays where is going to be very interesting. And the second thing, Mark, is, and you see it throughout college football, because of these spread offenses and because these defensive backs have to play so many snaps, you do see, and once again, I don't have quantitative data that backs this up, but I can tell you just from watching LSU the past couple of years, there have been a lot of injuries on the secondary, right? So you not only need to have 5 guys who can run and cover and play in space, it's kind of like the offensive line. You need 7, 8, 9 of those kinds of guys, and there's going to be a lot of those guys that need to step up going into next year.
You keep making a comment about the transfer portal. That keeps coming up because that is the theme of college football, and especially at LSU, that is going to fuel this team. It's become the free agency. It's a lot different than NFL free agency, but in regards to supplementing a roster where recruiting is still the core, but you need to use the transfer portal. So Miles Brennan's a unique case where most of the guys that as soon as somebody enters the transfer portal, people believe, okay, they're gone. They're gone for good. They've transferred. Well, technically, they have not transferred. They have opened up their options, and they can, under the guidelines, talk to other schools and teams. So Miles Brennan's make his decision to come back. Max Johnson, his decision seemed a little curious to me because he seemed to be one of the few quarterbacks across college football that was entrenched as a starter, coming off 27 touchdowns and 6 picks. Why do you go somewhere where you just are looking for competition? But he made his move, ironically, after leading the game-winning drive and throwing the game-winning touchdown pass against Texas A&M in the last game of the season to Texas A&M. So Miles Brennan comes back. One of my favorite recent stats would be that, of course, Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdowns in 15 games. Well, Miles Brennan threw 12 in 3 games. He was on the same pace the next season. And that's tough to do. I was saying, man, if Miles Brennan throws 20 less touchdowns than Joe Burrow, this is going to be a nice season. Unfortunately, he got hurt. Then the quarterback situation got a little messy from there. So is it Miles Brennan's deal, or is there going to be competition in camp?
Yeah, so let's start with the Max Johnson thing, because I get this question a lot on Power Hour LSU. was Max Johnson good, right? And, if you don't watch every snap of LSU football, you see, 27 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. And this is also pretty key as well. Max Johnson ended last year, 2020, with a bang with a game-winning touchdown pass. Same thing with Texas A&M. He ended with a bang with a game-winning touchdown pass. Quite frankly, Mark, he wasn't really that good, though. He started missing a lot of throws as he should be making as a second-year starter. Lost a lot of confidence. And, maybe year 3, year 4, he turns it around at Texas A&M. But, it wasn't great, right? Now, you bring in Miles Brennan. You bring him back, per se. Obviously, the first big story surrounding Miles Brennan is his health, right? Your best ability is availability. And if he can't stay healthy, it's going to put LSU in a spot where they have to play either Garrett Nussmeier, who's only in year 2 of his development, and Walker Howard, who is a 5-star true freshman, who is also overcoming an injury that he had during last season. Now, I love both of those quarterback prospects, Mark. I really do. However, if you look at LSU historically, this is such a crazy stat that in the modern era, LSU has never had a good starting quarterback who had to start in year 1 or year 2 of their development as the full-time starter, okay? And once again, I'll repeat that again. LSU, every quarterback that has had to be the full-time starter in year 1 or year 2 of their development has not worked out. Whereas every LSU quarterback who got to start as a full-time starter for the first time, year 3 and above, turned out to be really good, right? So experience matters at this position. There are very few Trevor Lawrences. There are very few Bryce Youngs that just are ready to go right now, that are ready to be year 1, year 2, national championship level quarterbacks. It's just very rare. And that has also been the case at LSU. And basically, that's the case everywhere, Mark, where, experience really matters at quarterback. So it's going to take a lot for Miles Brennan to not be the guy going into next season, but it all starts with his health.
Folks, please like the video. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Please like it, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football, and share the video out on social media, because I figure if you enjoy the content, others will as well that don't know we're here talking college football with you. And as soon as you do that, head on over to the LSU Power Hour. I got to get this straight. Power Hour LSU with Carter right here on YouTube. Just put it right there in the search bar. Head on over there right now. Check out his work. Subscribe to LSU football. Even if I think of it this way, if you love college football, even if you don't like LSU, you got to check out one of the name brands in college football and check out what's going on and listen to the discussion over there on LSU. And Carter talks a ton SEC.
Oh, yeah.
As well. So get on over there and check it out. Carter, I got to get your take. What was your first response when it was announced Brian Kelly's the head coach at LSU?
Yeah, winning his coach, to ever make a move like this. We all know that stat, right? He's an all-time great coach, right? And he's only missing one thing, which is the national championship trophy. And look, it's different when you're a coach who hasn't won one compared to someone who has won one, right? And Brian Kelly, that's all he's missing. And LSU is one of the 10 to 15 programs where you can actually get it done. So those are two very macro things. Number one, he's an all-time great coach. Number two, that's the only thing missing from his resume, right? And for your name to really be remembered, you need to win that national championship. So that's cool. Every coach that is currently an on-field staffer outside of Cortez Hankton, who just came over from Georgia, also has not won a national championship yet. So you're going to have a very hungry staff. Now, so much is going to come down to how his coordinators actually work out. Obviously, we talked about Matt House a little bit earlier, and then obviously we also talked about Mike Denbrock. Now, here's the difference, okay? And this is a big difference, is Ed Orgeron, who every LSU fan loves, Mark. And I want to, a lot of your national viewers are going to watch this video and say, well, they ran Ed Orgeron out of town and he just won a national championship just 2 years ago. No, the truth is everybody at LSU, and especially Louisiana natives like myself that wanted Ed Orgeron to stay and keep winning. No one wanted Ed Orgeron to fail. It meant a lot to a lot of people here that someone from Louisiana led LSU to the greatest team of all time, right? Fans would have wanted anything more than LSU to continue to be great under Ed Orgeron. It's just the exact opposite happened. He did nothing really to fix the disaster that became LSU football. So look, nobody wanted Ed Orgeron to go, but he started to fail and fail miserably. And you really started to see it with this in-game decision making from 2020 to 2021. The exact opposite is true with Brian Kelly. He's actually really good between the headset. He's really good at beating opponents he's supposed to beat. He's really good at making in-game decisions and quick decisions and figuring out an opponent as the game moves on. A lot of Notre Dame fans can attest to that. So to me, that's going to be one very underrated difference between Coach O and Brian Kelly, is that LSU is going to have a better in-game strategist between the headset.
Yeah, there's no question that clock management and game management suffered under Les Miles and then Ed Orgeron. They were the same type coach when it came to that. They could inspire the troops, and guys loved to sign with the team. They could recruit and certainly inspire the guys to play hard and do the right things on the field. But in regards to, game and clock management, questionable, and probably got worse under Orgeron, although Les Miles certainly had his obvious gaffes. I miss Les Miles just for the sheer content that I could produce like 2 to 3 videos per year and just say, what was he doing here? But
eating the grass, baby.
Eating the grass. All right, good stuff there. Carter, looking at the SEC, since you've got your eye on the entire conference, I got to think that LSU fans, including yourself, are looking to your nearest opponent to the West and thinking, wow, they just brought in the #1 class in the country. Even after it was named the #1 class on National Signing Day, they brought in like 3 top 5 guys at their positions. It's just crazy. They did go 8-4, disappointing season this past year, but they seem to be loaded and ready. Maybe not 22 might not be their peak year, but maybe 23. But you already got Alabama to deal with, and then you got Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. It's just the best division in college football. There's no question. But specifically Texas A&M, what do you think about what's going on there?
Yeah, so as far as the LSU perspective, A&M has never played well versus LSU. It's just a truth. Even in 2020, that it wasn't a great offensive performance at all. So as far as that matchup is concerned, Jimbo's just never really coached that well against LSU outside of, once again, a bad offensive performance of 2020 and the miracle 2018 overtime game. So as far as Texas A&M is concerned, it's the same thing for me, for Jimbo Fisher. He's not really that good of a play caller, and he still calls plays. And Mark, I did a deep dive on Jimbo when the coaching decision was actually being made, because, of course, Jimbo, his relationship with Scott Woodward, and this is what was really fascinating to me, was when I looked at his offensive discrepancies from when he's coaching at Kyle Field compared to when he's not coaching at Kyle Field, it is ridiculous how inept the Texas A&M offense looks on the road. And I know that every Texas A&M fan is nodding in agreement. So until that gets fixed and until he actually gets better quarterback play, A&M's not going to be better than a 9-3, 10-2 type of team. And that to me is, that's outside of recruiting. That's just simple stuff that needs to get fixed. However, you can't argue what they've done in recruiting. It's been nothing short of incredible. But this is a question I want to ask you, Mark. Okay, I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to look at you right now. Okay, what's very interesting is all these 5-star recruits are coming back, right? Or coming into the program, and they're all 5-stars, and they know they could play wherever they want year one, but they're not all going to be able to play year one at Texas A&M. So with the transfer portal rules being the way that they are now, I could see a lot of these 5-stars that get into Texas A&M. They don't play right away. I could easily see them pack their bags quickly as well, right?
Yeah, there's no question about that. I think that we see that. I think that especially a 5-star Most of them, of course, we're generalizing people, and everybody's got their own mindset and
Right.
their own expectation. And some are okay with, okay, I'm going to sit for a year. I get it, even though I can see where I must step quicker than the dude next to me and all that.
Right.
I'll be patient, but others will bolt after a year and say, I'm out of here if I don't see the right things and I'm not hearing the right things. Maybe into spring practice, I'm going to get out of here. We're going to see our next big swing into the transfer portal, obviously, after spring practice. But yeah, we could be a year away from a big defection class there at Texas A&M. Yeah, I would not be surprised at that.
Yeah, and this is something else that's really interesting. Is like I view some of the guys in their class as underrated compared to the 5 stars. So take I believe his name is Chris Marshall. I really like him a lot. I think he's going to be big. I think A&M got some real receivers. Obviously, Evan Stewart is phenomenal. And that's where they've really been lacking, right? The outside playmakers. And they barely missed out on Brian Thomas Jr., who had a really good true freshman season for LSU. So, I hope I got that right. Stewart and Marshall. I think I'm right about that.
I think you're there.
They really have some impressive players. Now, this is where it's going to get even more interesting between A&M and LSU. There's 2 5-star level players that they're both after, which is, of course, Harold Perkins and Jacoby Matthews. We'll see where both of them sign in February. Obviously, Harold Perkins has publicly committed to Texas A&M. LSU is not giving up, and Perkins looks to be the next Will Anderson type of player. And you see what Will Anderson has done for Alabama. I think he's that good. I really do. He's my number 1 player in 2022, period. I think he's better than Travis Hunter, Walter Nolan, Cade Klubnik, whoever you want to mention. I think he's really that big of a prospect. So if LSU misses out on him and he goes to Texas A&M, that's huge, and that's where it's looking at right now.
Yeah, the teams that acquire the most talent are going to most likely lose the most talent. We see that in quarterback rooms that are filled with 4 and 5 stars. But still, you want to acquire the most talent, because once you lose it, you're still going to be in the best position. So if you follow me here, on a scale of 1 to 100, if Texas A&M's bringing in a 98 and they lose some of those guys and it levels off to an 85, that's better than bringing in an 85 that you lose a few dudes and it's a 75. So,
right.
It's just the roster management for these coaches is much more difficult than it was. Just look at the quarterback position. I think, the way a coach would approach it 2 years ago was, hey, our starting quarterback's going into a senior season. We're comfortable with him. He's good. Then we got our development guy. He's shown us good things. He's a sophomore. He's going to be the next guy in line. They had this progression, and they'd be able to chart it out for a few years. And now it's just kind of like, let's just acquire the best talent, and whoever leaves, and we're going to have to coach the other guys and try to retain as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what's going to be interesting as well. There's still some really good football players out there, right? Like take Jermaine Burton, obviously, one of the biggest transfer portal entries thus far. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was a difference maker for Georgia in the championship game. What does he decide to do? Does he join Cortez Hankton with LSU, or does he go to Alabama, where some people expect him to go? So, with the transfer portal being the way that it is now, it's just amazing how much that one player can really change things for your team, right? I just don't know if I've ever seen, Mark, a more valuable receiver at Alabama than Jameson Williams. Now, there have been better. Obviously, Devonta Smith was better. Amari Cooper was better, but it was ridiculous how big of a drop off Jameson Williams, and then you add on to the John Mechie injury as well. You see how important just having those extra playmakers really are to your roster. And Jermaine Burton is a real field stretcher, great route runner, and just that one player, Mark, that one player can just change so much for your roster now. And it makes it kind of exciting, yet at the same time, kind of terrifying because you just don't know. You just don't know. Like next year as LSU fans, we're going to be looking to be like, wait, who is that guy? Who's that guy? And who are these coaches? It's going to look so new. And, you know, I don't know about you, Mark. I'm open to change. I'm open to things like this. Name, image, and likeness doesn't bother me so much. But there's obviously, you know, it creates so much more roster volatility. And we'll see how that actually affects all these elite programs moving forward.
Power Hour LSU, folks. Get on over there. Check out Carter's work right there. Power Hour LSU. Carter, we appreciate you stopping by, laying down the knowledge for us.
We'll talk to you soon, Mark. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.